The Florida Gators made some progress this week with blue chip recruits that took official visits to Gainesville.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. I don't know if you saw, but the Florida Gators baseball team, they're Omaha bound. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But happy Monday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and that's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions do apply. And today we're talking about the official visits that wrapped up this past weekend with the Florida Gators. They had a lot of blue chip players on campus. They had 3 5-stars on campus. Pretty big official visit weekend for them. We're going to start with the offensive players. First up, interior offensive lineman Solomon Thomas. Florida State commit right now, 5-star player. They put the full court press on him, and they're going to continue to do so. Like I've said before, this is a very realistic chance that the Florida Gators flip Solomon Thomas. We've had times throughout this recruitment where it's felt like he's more likely to be a Florida Gator than he is to be a Florida State Seminole, LSU Tiger, whatever it may be. There have been times throughout this recruitment where it's felt more like, hey, he might be a Gator. And the main thing with LSU is that he wants to be as close to home as possible. LSU's a little bit away there. Solomon Thomas does not currently have an official visit scheduled for this coming weekend, but he does have an OV to Florida State on June 21st. And I do believe that there's a decent chance he's going to be on campus again, unofficially, for Miami at Florida. Even if a flip does happen for Solomon Thomas, the fact that right now you've got 3 schools lobbying for his talents kind of tells me that, hey, you might need this one to go on for a little bit. If it happens now, like if a flip were to happen, I don't know, early July, if a flip happens early July, you're probably still going to be dealing with this recruitment and fighting for this commitment through signing day, even if he does flip to Florida. If he flips to LSU, I promise you, this Florida Gators coaching staff is not going to back down because they never do. But for Solomon Thomas right now, I don't necessarily think a move is going to happen within the next few weeks. I think if a decision comes down, it'll probably be closer to the season, if not into the season, just with how things are going at this time. You also had wide receiver Caleb Cunningham, another 5-star receiver, on campus this weekend. As expected, after the official visit, he started saying that Florida was at the top with Auburn. We also know that there's a lot of schools in play for Caleb Cunningham still. It's like every time he visits anywhere, he starts saying, hey, they're at the top. They're at the top. They're my new number 1. They're near the top. They're right up there. Every time it's what happens with Caleb Cunningham. I said this last week that was the expectation as well with Caleb Cunningham. I talked about this by myself and with Brian Smith on the show last week. With Caleb Cunningham, it feels like every place he visits is all of a sudden at the top of his list. Right now, he's saying Florida's at the top with Auburn. I said this last week, and I will say this again. I still think Caleb Cunningham winds up at Auburn. It's just, I don't even know what it is about Auburn that specifically drives me to think Caleb Cunningham is going to go there. But just every time I look at his recruitment, I look at the visits, I look at everything he said, it says Auburn to me. And I'm trying to just read the tea leaves here, but I feel like he's going to be an Auburn Tiger, or at least commit to Auburn. Interior offensive lineman John Mills from California was on campus this week, said this last week, and it's still true, or at least in my opinion, it's still true. I think this will come down to Florida or Texas. He visits Texas next week. And something about this recruitment to me just screams Florida or Texas. I think that Florida has a much more real chance than some people thought going into the weekend. Said that last week, and I still stand that I think John Mills is going to be a Florida Gator or a Texas Longhorn, and I do think that it's very realistic to say, hey, could be Florida Gator bound. I understand that Texas is the favorite. They probably should be the favorite right now, but I don't like that it's dismissive of Florida right now. It should have been always, hey, Florida's a realistic shot here. And it is right now. Whether or not you want to admit it, it is. Tight end Hollis Davidson was on campus this weekend. We also had tight end Andrew Olish, but haven't heard much from that visit yet. Hollis Davidson, right now it's Georgia, Florida State, Auburn, and Florida. Those are kind of the final four, the current four, and he's got more visits coming up after this Florida visit. He used to be an Auburn commit. Auburn's still in it at this time, but he is currently decommitted from them. I alluded to this last week. I don't have my hopes up for Hollis Davidson, not because of anything involving him specifically. It's that he's got a couple of other visits to take. And I feel like usually when you have these official visits scheduled weeks and months in advance, then you take those visits, right? Like you kind of want to go, hey, I decommitted once. I don't want to pick a school and decommit again. I'm going to take my time with this one and let it go. And that's fine. I have said that I fully respect the staff's approach of most of the time going, hey, like take your time, make your commit when you want to commit, because we want you to make a commitment to be a Florida Gator and be a Florida Gator. I said when I used to work retail, I was kind of the same way where I was just like, hey, like do whatever. Because, you put a little honey on it and people are just like, okay, like they're letting me make my own decision. However, we know Florida wants to take 2 tight ends this cycle. I've said before, I think it's as simple as the first tight ends that Florida's actually got committable offers with. Those first tight ends to commit will be the 2 that they take this cycle. And if Hollis Davidson is planning on taking the rest of his official visits, might miss the boat on that one. Which again, I know Florida would take him right now if he said it, but he hasn't yet. And by the time he does make a decision, whenever that may be, might be a little too late. But I would take him in a heartbeat. Wide receiver Cortez Mills. I want to say that I think he's going to wind up at Miami. That's just where I'm landing on it right now. Again, it's not anything against him or anything like that. I just think he's going to be Miami bound. He's just someone that I feel like every time I've read about him, every time I've heard about him, he's not been super high on Florida. Like he's been like, yeah, like Florida's recruiting me, like, but he's not like, he doesn't speak how the other recruits commit. And that could just be the way that he speaks. But it makes it harder for me to buy that he's super invested in Florida right now. I will say also he's got official visits with Miami and Oklahoma. And then I think he wants to commit shortly after those. Having those 2 schools right after you, hard to make a lasting impression for someone that hasn't given the impression he's super enthusiastic about Florida as it is. Interior offensive lineman Micah DeBose also is there. He's another one of those recruits where he goes, hey, I like the 2 offensive line coach approach. You really got 3 with the assistant there too. And there's a ton of attention that goes in the offensive line. They want to build, he said they want to build, I think it was on 3. He's like, they want to build this offense from the offensive line out, so they need offensive line help. Even if they didn't want to build the offense from the offensive line out, you need offensive line help. We saw this team play last year, and at this point, they're getting a little senior at some spots. Need some youth in there. Micah DeBose is down to Alabama, LSU, Florida, and Ohio State. He said it's pretty even between the 4 programs. I believe him. I don't know if you do, but I believe him. Plans on committing the 4th of July weekend, has visits with Ohio State next week and then Alabama the following week. And then I believe he's like, all right, I'm going to take my almost 2 weeks off and make my decision and then announce my commitment 4th of July weekend. Could work out for Florida. But again, you got 2 schools, especially Ohio State and Alabama. They know how to do official visits. they know how to pack it up. And so it could be a little bit of a hard selling point. But again, we get the 2 offensive line coach approach is something that recruits love, and then we don't see it really happen. Also, offensive lineman Taryn Hedrick, who was supposed to be on campus this weekend, canceled that, I believe, the morning of, and yesterday committed to Ole Miss. So safe to say Florida's out of the running for him. It's once again another Ole Miss, Florida, duke it out kind of thing. But that is how it is. We're going to flip to the defensive side of the ball. But first, we're going to get a quick word from LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else. Like, you won't find me anywhere else. Not saying I'm the most professional guy, but you won't find me anywhere else other than LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn. You can go ahead and add me. My name's Brandon Olsen. I've never lied about it. You can go ahead and add me if you want. I don't care. We'll connect. Why not? It's networking. I'm there for it. Just saying, you won't find me anywhere else. No, none of the other job sites. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to properly go through a hiring process. It takes a lot, so they're constantly trying to find ways to make the process easier for you. Even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process that much easier and quicker for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. I have to admit this to you all. I'm falling for it, and I don't usually fall for it. Just know that. I still don't think he's going to be a Florida Gator, but that's why it's upsetting for me. Safety Trey McNutt was on campus this weekend. Saw the pictures that he took during the official visit, him and Will Harris, and I have to say, Trey McNutt looks like he was built in a freaking lab. Okay, like he looks like he was built in a lab to play safety. And that immediately makes me go, damn it, do whatever you can to get him. 5-star safety, by the way, stud player there. Obviously, film's good. Like, he's a good football player. But then, like, again, looking at the frame, like, if you haven't yet, just look up his Instagram, his Twitter, or whatever. It's Trey McNutt, Trey, and his last name's McNutt. You look at it, he's got these insanely long arms. Like, dude can tie his freaking shoes without bending over. Rocked up frame. Just like well-defined arms. He looks like he's been in Florida strength and conditioning program for 3 years. Like that's what he looks like build-wise. And then obviously his film, pretty damn good. And by all accounts, Florida crushed this visit. Okay? By all accounts that I've heard, that I've spoken to, crushed this visit. I will still say, and I said it 2 minutes ago, I'm still skeptical about whether or not Trey McNutt will actually be a Florida Gator. It's just where that I still think the same thing I thought before the visit was, I think he winds up at Ohio State or Oregon. I feel better about Florida's place with him. I think Florida feels better about their place with him. And I mean, hey, if Tennessee wants to somehow get him up for the game, go ahead and do that. Or Florida plays there, pull up an upset. I mentioned Tennessee specifically not because they're really in on him like that, but that his dad is a college football coach in the state of Tennessee. It's the only reason. And he's mentioned family is important to him. If I'm Tennessee, I'm trying to get him there. But if I'm him, I don't want to go play Tennessee where safeties haven't historically done great, since Eric Berry. Just haven't been awesome. But Trey McNutt looks the part. Film looks good. Again, by all accounts, they crushed this visit with him. He had Jason Marshall recruiting him. He had Cormani McLean there. He had so many players talking to him that I think it was on 3 listed it as Jason Marshall, Cormani McLean, etc. Like, they put the full court press on for Trey McNutt. Hopefully, they made some significant actual headway with him. I will try to figure out more about that. And his film, like I said, looks pretty damn good. Do whatever you can to get. He's my Zaire Addison of defense now. How's Zaire Addison? I'm like, hey, do anything you can to get Zaire Addison. Do anything you can to get Trey McNutt. Cornerback Ben Hanks Jr., of course, a legacy player. I think right now Florida's in the lead. Again, another one where by all accounts they crushed this official visit. And yeah, I think Florida's in the lead. His dad was on campus for the official visit. His dad, of course, legacy linebacker for the Florida Gators in the early mid 90s. Ben Hanks. Who would have thought Ben Hanks Jr.'s dad is Ben Hanks? Still has official visits with Georgia, Florida State, and Miami, and is looking to commit at some point this summer. I feel like you know what I'm going to say here, and you could say it with me if you want. It's really hard to maintain that impression when you have those three schools behind you in official visits. And again, I understand we hate Florida State, we hate Georgia, we hate Miami. They're all pieces of garbage programs, pieces of garbage universities. Hate them completely. Absolutely agree. Fact remains, they know how to put together these official visits. They do it pretty well. And so for Florida, you got to find a way to, if you can get him to cancel one of those and come on an OV, whatever it is, you do that. Not going to be easy to do, but you got to try your best to do that and get him back on campus again. If you can get him on campus for the Miami game, that'll be an electric atmosphere. I'm sure his dad would like to be there anyway, even again, unofficially. But Ben Hanks Jr. is someone that Florida right now, like I said, is in the lead for. I'm not knocking on wood because I hate saying this. I'm not super concerned with him committing to Georgia or Florida State right now. I think it's a Florida-Miami battle at this point in time. Could open up, especially like Florida State's had success with corners lately, so has Georgia. But just feels to me like Miami has felt like they're in the lead for a while. Florida's been in number 2. Florida had a really good visit with him. So I feel like Florida's closed the gap there, and right now it's Florida in the lead, Miami at number 2. Linebacker Miles Johnson said it last week, texted the Insider program. I think he'll be a Gator. And I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of skeptical or not skeptical. I'm kind of torn on how I feel about it because I do think that Florida does a good job of pursuing players. I think Florida does a good job pursuing linebackers, especially with Ron Roberts there. You get to do a lot more than when it was just Jay Bateman. When it was just Jay Bateman, you're kind of just saying, "Hey, I'm the linebacker coach. Come here." When you're Ron Roberts, you go, "Hey, I'm the whatever the hell they call it, associate head coach of the defense, whatever there is. Come here. I can use you in the ways you want to be used." Like you get that additional selling point at linebacker. So I do think Florida's doing a good job of recruiting him. Ole Miss is also in play here. So you win that one, you can beat Ole Miss out. However, the flip part of it is more Alabama backing off of him. He hasn't visited Alabama in a couple of months at this point. Doesn't have an official visit scheduled with them at this point. Florida is the only OV that he had scheduled for a while. I just feel like this is more Alabama backing off. And we've heard reports that, hey, Alabama's kind of backed off a little bit. But from the beginning, this has felt like, hey, it doesn't really feel like this is a Florida-Alabama battle. It feels like it's Florida-Ole Miss right now. And that's fine. I think Florida will win this one. I think Miles Johnson would want to be a Florida Gator, but it's just a matter of actually locking it down. Linebacker Jacob Falk, also, it's down to Florida, Bama, and Auburn, where he is currently committed to. I think this is going to be hard to win. Not impossible, but hard also because his brother is 2023 Auburn commit, Keldrick Falk, who we talked about on this show back in the John Garcia days, who's now with Rivals. But dating back to then, we were talking about Keldrick Falk, his brother Caleb, someone that I know that it's very common for players to not go play with their sibling, but it's also very common for players to go play with their sibling if they get the opportunity. And so I do think it's a little bit of a hard sell to get him. But again, he was the one that said, "Hey, yeah, Florida's up there with Auburn and Alabama right now." Like it's those three. And I do think that for Florida being the only out-of-state school in that list, or the only non-Alabama school in general there being on that list, you got to feel at least pretty good about it. I think, at least. I could be wrong, but I feel like even, like, not saying to get him, but you got to feel pretty good that you're up there and the only out-of-state school that's even got a shot at him right now. So I do feel pretty good about that. We are about to talk about baseball because our Florida Gators are Omaha bound. But first, a quick word from FanDuel. Summertime means baseball. The NBA Finals. It's beautiful time. Florida Gators going to Omaha, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 that you can use to bet everything from Finals MVP to who's going to hit a home run. Alec Burleson hit one for me yesterday. Loved that. That was beautiful to see. Adley Rushman, my fantasy team, 6 RBIs and a grand slam yesterday. Beautiful. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks for being Locked On Gators, your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. I need to tell you that Florida Gators baseball game against Clemson on Sunday. First off, what a freaking game. It started at 2:30 Eastern time and ended at about 7:30-ish, around then. It was a rough go of things. Not even a rough go of things. It was rough for like my heart. Like also, you talk about this team, like I said, they're going to Omaha. And if you don't know, Omaha means that they're going to the College Baseball World Series, which starts this coming Friday. They will play their first game. At the time of recording this, which is right after that game, we don't know who they're playing yet. That's to be determined. Other games have to be played. But Florida on Saturday beat Clemson 10-7 with a hell of a fifth inning where they picked up 7 runs there. Wild to see. Just again, this is just a team that you asked. Honestly, I was going to say if you asked a month or two ago, if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I'm not saying that this is a team that's going to the College World Series. Because part of it was, hey, don't let the Gators get hot. And part of it was the Gators are not getting hot. Like they're not doing anything to get hot there. Wow. It was just a nuts game where from the beginning you had the ejection in the second inning. That was, I'm gonna be honest with you, kind of BS. I get it. He made contact with the umpire because he like kind of put his hand on his shoulder for a second. But I don't know. It felt icky, I guess, to say, with the ejection in the second inning. It was Jack Caglione picked up he fielded the ground ball, tagged the guy. They kind of bumped into each other. Jack on the way back was talking ish. They bumped again, and then bench is cleared from Clemson, kind of. And the runner who was on second to start the play rounded third and came into the scuffle. And then he got kicked out. Jack Crichton, he got kicked out of the game again for like legitimately doing that to the umpire, like just like touching him slightly. He got ejected from the game. Clemson's first base coach and head coach got kicked out of the game. They got ejected and suspended, but they don't get to play another game to face that suspension right now. But Florida just living and dying by the long ball is something that will forever drive me crazy. In that game, you had Jack went yard in I believe it was the first inning that he went. If I'm not mistaken, it was him in the first inning that he just belted it over the batter's eye in center field. You had Ashton Wilson hit one. You had Brody Dene hit one. And Brody's, I did not think was going. Like, he knew it the second he swung. But even when you watch the replay, he got so underneath that ball. It was wild. Pitching was just, Brandon Neely's just a dude. Like, I cannot express how incredible his run has been this postseason. Thank God that the Florida Gators won, because their bullpen would have been just shredded if they had to play another game today. But they won in the bottom of the 13th inning. Walk off by Michael Robertson. I don't even know what I want to call it. Like, I don't know if I call it a double, because he never had to go anywhere. he just hit it into the gap. Runners on second and third, I believe it was, hit it into the gap and scored the 2 runs to win the game. It was just insane, incredible, heart-stopping. Honestly, there were multiple points in that game where I was like, this is just absolutely cooked. You look at when Clemson, after that ejection in the second inning, Florida came out. Not a good inning for them. Not a good bottom of the second. Then the top of the third, Clemson scores 3, and it kind of felt like, oh, this is going to be that kind of game. It was 3-2. Florida ties it almost immediately. Florida ties it almost immediately in the bottom of the third, and then Florida takes the lead, and then Florida gives up the lead. Every time Clemson took the lead or did anything, it felt like it was kind of a wrap. Just because Clemson was obviously this game was in Clemson or at Clemson. So even though Florida was the home team, just because how super regionals work, but is at Clemson. So their crowd was just rocking the whole time. Florida got not lucky, but there was a little collision with Clemson infielders. Their second baseman and shortstop collided with each other. Florida benefited from it. I don't think they were getting it out anyway. Like, I want to make that one clear. I don't think they were getting anybody out on that, but helped Florida again in the long run. I don't understand it. Just to be honest, it's nuts to me. Just that Florida, this is a team that was barely 500, barely made the tournament. And now they're on an incredible run that's got them into the College World Series. This is a team that, frankly, at some points in this year, just looked awful. Like, not even at a lot of points in this year, they just looked bad. That game against St. John's to start the year, they lost, and then the next two got canceled with weather. But they lost that game against St. John's to start the year. And we were kind of like, all right, first game of the year, it is what it is. Then they had a few games where they just looked horrendous at times. They had the Florida State run, like they lost 3-14 Florida State, 1-6 to LSU, 2-12 to Mississippi State. They lost 1-2 to Missouri, 3-4 to Missouri, 10-11 to Missouri. You sense a trend there. They lost quite a bit. 4-19 to Florida State, 3-10 to South Carolina, 8-9 to South Carolina. By the way, these were all back-to-back. The 3 Missouri losses, the 4-19 loss to Florida State, then the 3-10 and 8-9 loss to South Carolina. Those were all in a row. Just want to throw that one out there. Lost to Vanderbilt, that series. Lost the series to Arkansas. Lost the series to Tennessee. Lost the series to Kentucky. You see how things went? Not awesome, right? SEC tournament, bounced in the first round. Scraped into the regional. Beat Nebraska. Lost to Oklahoma State in embarrassing fashion. Beat Nebraska in a shootout. I was going to say blowout. In a shootout. Beat Oklahoma State. And then you go to the Super Regional, beat Clemson behind a massive 5th inning. Then beat Clemson behind, I don't even know how to describe how they won that game. Obviously, I know what happened. We were in the group chat going nuts about it. But it was just like, I don't know what the hell is in the water for Florida's baseball team, but they just don't die. Like, they just don't. And it was insane. Like Jack Caglione got walked. He got intentionally walked 3 times and hit by a pitch once. He comes up in extra innings, and everyone's like, "Oh, you idiots! You're pitching to Jack." Struck him out on 3 pitches, 3 straight sinkers. Got him. Lefty too, where he's better against lefties than righties. It was just a nuts game. It was incredible. Luke Heyman 1 for 7. His one hit was in extra innings in that 13th inning. It was just ridiculous to watch this game. It was incredible to watch this game. And I will say this, officiating at the college level is just disgusting. It's horrible. We had a 15-minute delay for that second inning scuffle where they ejected a guy. We had another 15 minutes almost where they were discussing the manager kicking out thing. That game took 5 hours, and it could have taken significantly less if the umps didn't make it an ump show like they always do, because that's what they do. But Florida, man, I don't even know what their chances are in the College World Series, but I can tell you that, 1, you cannot count out a Kevin O'Sullivan coached Florida Gators baseball team. This is one of the worst teams he's had since he got to Gainesville, and they're in the College World Series. And 2, I will never doubt them again. I will say that. And 3, regardless of how this goes, I know that this is not exactly a mentality that everyone will share, and that's fine. Regardless of how this goes, this was a successful season for the Florida Gators baseball team. Expectations at the start of the year were College World Series. Okay? Halfway through the year, I think pretty much everybody was like, oh, this is not a World Series team. Then they're in the College World Series. But once they made the tournament, I feel like you were kind of playing with house money because we were just, I mean, Florida Gators fans, we were just sitting here like, just let us in the tournament. Like, just let us in the tournament and give us a chance, see what happens. Damn. Just damn. You're playing with house money at this point. You're going to Omaha. You have a chance to get back and get back to glory, greatness, whatever the hell you want to call it. You have a chance to win the whole damn thing. And this is playing with house money. I love seeing it because I feel like this is the time where they can really just play loose. Like, no one thought you'd be here. So many people thought you shouldn't have even been in the tournament. When it came out, a lot of people were like, this is just putting them in here just to put them in here just because they're Florida. But man, Florida, yeah, just because they're Florida, they're showing exactly why they belong there. And it's incredible to see. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We will be back tomorrow talking more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33, and I'll see you all next time.